Right, that's brilliant. Thank you for joining us. And we've put on, as you know, we've put on a special session today because one of the requirements for you as our schools is that you're going to produce a case study for us about one of the strands, one of the propositions from our compassionate strand. David Wood is going to talk you through a case study, but we sort of saw this as a bit of a questions and answers session as well. Now I know, for example, I know Razia Ali is joining us from I'm not so sure what I'm doing yet, not sure if I'm doing it this year or next. So hopefully by the end of this, Razia is going to be all thumbs up saying, yes, I'm good to go. I know Kalsum has got an amazing experience in terms of her work. She's done a lot of work already. She worked very closely with Morris and her school's very far down the line in terms of vision and ethos, etc. So, and Kalsum's also helped me by sharing me some videos from some training days she's had with him. Ollie, are you able to just give us a quick heads up about where you are with this at the moment? Are you hoping that you're going to be able to do a case study this year, or are you more of a let's see what happens by the end of this session?
Yeah, depending on how long it takes me, either this year or 5 years time. No. Yeah, we're doing in our school, we're doing the one about the environment and making an impact on the local community. It fits in with our SDP and with our trust vision for the future anyway. So we've made a start on that.
Brilliant.
But it's whether I'll have enough done by the end of this term to perhaps talk about the journey. I'm not sure. But yeah,
you're going to give it a go.
Had Gilroy come round and had a good chat with him about it all. So yeah.
Oh, fabulous. Kalsum, did I sort of summed you up, and I think you probably prefer to speak for yourself, really. Do you want to say a few words, Kalsum, so that David gets an idea of the feel of the group?
I think you summed it up really well. We worked with Morris, I think, quite a number of years ago, and we did a conference together actually as well, because we'd started the work. But I think we have got quite a good way with it. I think what happened was when you set this out, it sparked off the ideas of where we wanted to go next. So we've done quite a bit of work. We've tried to link it in with our curriculum as much as possible, because we're a rights respecting school as well. So we threaded that in as well. But yeah, I think you captured it really. It's the vision and ethos aspects of it. You know, all our governors were involved right at the beginning. And we had all the training with Morris. He came into school and did loads of training with us. So we're very, very fortunate to be involved at that point.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Laura, did you want to say a few words about where you're at the moment?
That's magic.
Yeah, sorry. Hello, I'm driving my way home, so I apologise. Okay. But yes, we are. So we were hoping to get a case study done by the end of the term. Ours is going to be focused around our anti-racism ethos and all the work we've been doing over the past couple of years. So I think Gilroy's our link person, but yes, I need to kind of know what I need to show you all, really. So yes.
Thank you. And we've got Kate's going to be joining us later on. She's got a meeting that's overrunning, but she's hoping to join us. That's okay. Kate Slater. Razia, did you want to say a few words? Lovely to see you.
I'm sorry, I can't. I don't know why my camera's not working today. Can you see me? No, you can't.
No, but we can hear you loud and clear. So that's lovely.
Yeah, I'm a little bit like you said, Azita. At the moment, there's so much going on. I do want to do this, but I don't know. I'm looking forward to listening to you all and seeing how you've gone about it, and then see what I put into place. Listening to Kalsum just there with the vision and the ethos, that is something that I want to focus on as well. And with the reaccreditation of my Gold Award for UNICEF coming up, I think I could really make it work. But at the moment, I'm going to be completely honest, I haven't got my proper focus, and that is what is worrying me.
Yeah, well, don't be worried, because we're here to help. So, and I've worked very closely with Razia over a number of years. So I'm more than happy to support her on that. Manjit, did you want to say a few words, or just for the group who maybe haven't met you?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, lovely. Sorry, I wasn't sure what's happening with my mic. So I've been working with ARC Victoria School, and they've done loads of different things. We haven't quite worked out what our case study will focus on. Unfortunately, bouts of COVID have interrupted our progress, but I do have a meeting with them again on this Wednesday to sort of look at what might happen. So I'm hoping that actually some ideas from here might shape up some of the content of that meeting. So it's a toss up between, you know, what are the things that we've already done that we can talk about, and what are the things that we want to do to take some of those things a bit further. So not quite sure where we will land with that.
Thanks, Manjit.
Okay.
Gilroy, did you want to say a few words? Welcome, by the way. And we're not expecting anyone to be far down the line at the moment. This is sort of case studies, hopefully going to sort of be our springboard.
Good evening, everyone. I'm the one who's come in as student, but it's Gilroy. I'm a different system at the moment. Right, I just caught the tail end of that. I do apologise for coming in a bit late, but glad to see that Oliver's here. Lovely.
Yes.
And I don't know if Oliver's had the chance to say anything yet about. He has?
He says you've met,
Oh,
and
yes.
yeah, so that's great. Good to go.
Yes, good to go.
Thank goodness that was true. Now Gilroy appears.
No, it wasn't.
Ollie.
Yeah, everything Ollie said is true. But I can say this: I was very impressed and inspired by the visit, and it certainly fits the area that is chosen perfectly. There are lots to celebrate, lots to validate, and it's going to be exciting when the full vision is realised. But what I saw so far, very inspirational.
Brilliant. Amajot, did you want to introduce yourself or just say a few words? Because I'm sure you'll have heard from Amajot, because you'll have received emails from her.
Yeah, I'm much better on email than I am in person. Yeah, I just do the admin for CoED and worked with Maurice very closely for a few years, and now I'm sort of trying to spearhead this project and hopefully get everybody organised. So yeah, you might hear from me via email a lot, just to sort of jog you along and maybe give and pass on all of the information. So hopefully, well, we've hopefully you should have had the last case study anyway that was sent through from David. It was hefty, but it was a good one. It gives us a little bit of an idea of where we're going with this. But hopefully we'll have a whole bunch of different media we can share to everybody. Yeah, so that's a little bit about me. And yeah, back to you, Azita.
Yeah. So just before I pass over to David, I'd just like to say that David won't know this, but I worked in London for many, many years, and I know the legacy of the work from the London Challenge that I know, David, you were very co-founder of, co-producer of.
Well, whatever. Tim Brighouse and myself.
But what I remember so much is my school actually wasn't part of the process, but I met many heads that had been part of the process. And the bit that really touched me very much was how the whole of London Challenge wasn't about schools in isolation, competing with their neighbours, trying to get the best results and get the best, best students. London Challenge was very much about sharing and building communities. And that I know from having spoken to heads, I used to feel quite jealous, thinking I'd really wish I'd been part of it. And I think to produce that kind of ethos, you have to have compassion built into that. So I think, David, is really wonderful that you're joining us today, and you very much lead on compassion in education, and thank you so much. And what we want from you today really is just to give us a little bit of a talk through about case studies and how to approach them, really.
Yeah, sure.
Is that okay?
Sure. Then
Thanks, David.
Thank you very much, Azita, for that introduction, and good evening, everybody. Yes, I'll just give a brief overview, and then we can get back to questions and answers. I have submitted one admittedly long example. It's a secondary school example, and personally I'm working on 2 primary school examples, which I hope we'll get by the end of this term. So maybe that's 3, because people always like to look at what does a case study actually look like. The one you've got is a bit long, but at least it meets the structure. So let me just start by saying, well, first of all, as you've been saying, the first big challenge is to come up with a title you want to write to. As we know, and Azita did great work with our team doing the audit, the 16 boxes, the 4 strands, and it's within that you'll find a title. The one I sent was from the first strand on values, and we called it Mountain Rescue. It's a rescuing vulnerable students, and that was a success for all one. But that's just an example. We're doing this, I want to demystify it tonight, because what we're really trying to do, I think in simple terms, as London did, is I used to say to all schools, just write up the things you're most proud of. Now, admittedly, we're talking about compassion here, so that's an extra lens. But generally, there must be something every school is proud of in terms of the guidance we sent out, whether it's ethos, values, whatever. And many of you are well down the track on rights respecting schools, eco schools, or value schools, or whatever title you want to give them. So the important thing is not to worry too much. There must be something you've got that's partly started. That's my other advice. Choose something you've already got some work in the bank on, because it's hard work if you suddenly cast around and start from nothing. But you must have something. Maybe it's been a governor's presentation, maybe it's been a CPD talk in the school. There must be something. But what I want to get onto now is structure. Now, remember that's set out clearly on page 8 of the guidance, but if I can put some skin on the bones, the title's interesting because we always used to say in London, let's have a really exciting, arresting title. So, for example, Mountain Rescue is that. So whatever you've got, come up with a really good title that people sit back and say, what's that, before you unpack it. So that might start a debate. As you know, we all agreed as a group that we would have to have a short abstract. So that's really 8 lines saying, this is what it's all about. This is just to capture the reader. I'm assuming everybody wants to read each other. And as Zita says, we want to start a good schools network here. And just to remind you, there are 6 key words that we would put in the abstract. Now that's easy. Compassion will always be there, and we've set out in the guidance all the 16 boxes and the 4 strands, and there's lots of key words, but they're your key words. The point about keywords is the reader going to be interested from the start because you're writing about equity, or you're writing about values, or you're writing about compassion, whatever it is. And then we come thirdly, and I'll come to the meat in a moment, we'll come to the focus area. So we just want you to say there, this is the strand we're writing about, and this is the box we're really concentrating on. We accept, as the guidance says, that there'll be a bit of movement between boxes and strands, but nevertheless, we want you to focus. The whole idea is, what are you focusing down on? And that's back to the title, and that's back to the abstract. Aims and rationale. So this is more going into depth. And this is where hopefully you might want to link it to other work that other people have done. If you're a rights respecting school, that's easy, because you simply say on our aims and rationale, we just want you to tell us our story of rights respecting, but you can refer easily then to other studies, because there's some literature around that, isn't there? If you're doing something unique, then you just have to say, we really believe in this. We can't find anybody else who's done this, and we're really interested in showing you what this might be. Okay. And then the easiest bit of all, which sometimes I say when you're writing an article and it's a white piece of paper and you don't know how to get started, the easiest bit of all is the context of your school. And here I have to stop schools in London writing about 10,000 words on the context of their school, because naturally you're all proud of it. You all want to tell us about the competition, and you'll be different. But obviously, it's the obvious things, you know, the free school meals things comes in, the ethnic minority composition might come in, depending where you are, the rural and the urban, but try not to get carried away on that. I mean, a few hundred words will be enough. And you've all got that, so that's an easy start, isn't it? Then we come to the real heart of the case study, which actually, for all the other titles I've given you, makes up probably half the thing, and that's the story. So what we want is a clear record of the actions, the events, the timescales, because some people write case study. You've been going at for 2 years. Some are writing that they've put something together as little as 1 term, and then who was involved. Is it really about in a curriculum area that only limits it to a few teachers? Is it about the whole community, or parents have been involved? Is it more about a case study on leadership, in which case it involves more middle and senior leaders? So we need to know, not everybody needs to be involved in this. I know we all believe in inclusive education, but don't think everybody has got to it. This could come from a few people who are particularly driving this particular initiative. You might want to involve people by saying what the impact was and what it meant to them as a teacher or a classroom assistant. So that's the important thing, the stories. I'll repeat again. So it's almost like a log. You need to go back in history. I know schools move at a fast pace and say, well, over the last years, when did we do that? And what did we do? And over what period? So it's a very clear, to the reader, it's a very clear record. This is where we started, this is what we do, and this is where we've got to. Crucially, I think personally, and I think this is the crucial thing after the story is, well, so what? There's the so what question. What difference did it make? Are we just pretending here, or did it have a real impact? Did it change children's lives a little bit? Did it make a contribution to school improvement? So we do want an impact. So going back to my first point about what title you've got, do choose something that you know is making and will make an impact. Otherwise, it loses a bit of credibility. It's got to be something that's really made a difference, and that might help you on your focus. And I know as school leaders or people or consultants, you've all got things that have really made a difference, and you've got a track record of that. The importance of that is we need to see some evidence here of, well, what difference did it make? And therefore you need to think about a bit of success criteria. Did it really, in the case study I sent out, or the school did it make a difference to those, you know, those very vulnerable children and their lives? Were they able to stay in school? Were they able to be included, etc.? So that's one sense. Did it make a difference? I mean, I could take another extreme. If you took something like, you think you're brilliant at teaching reading in your primary school, well, obviously you've got some stats there to say, well, look, it made a difference because we've got percentages are above average, or whatever phrase. So you can quote, I don't want it to, you don't have to have too much statistical evidence, but it's good if you do. But it may be a qualitative outcome. Did it make a difference to the way that teachers felt about themselves, to their morale? Or did it make a difference to the way that people were able to join in better or feel included? So, but just think about success criteria. They're your success criteria. You set them up, providing you feel at the end of the case study you've met them, and you can say, yes, we can say. And I think best ways of doing this in all the case studies I've done over the years would be to think about what I call external evidence first. Now, not necessarily Ofsted, because that only happens every 4 years, but many of you are in multi-academy trusts, and maybe you've had a trust review. Some of you are local authority schools, maybe you've worked with a local authority on it. Some of you do peer review. So another school has had a look at what you're doing. Some of you have had consultants or a range of advisors who've come in and written a report. So whatever you've got, that's external evidence, which is valuable, because you want people to say, you're going to evaluate it, but you want people to say, yes, that really did make a difference. from whatever, from another school's point of view or a trust or whatever. The other crucial thing for you is internal evidence. And that you can go about that a lot of different ways. There may be some data that you could quote depending on the study you're doing. There may be a questionnaire you've done. There may be, and I think all case studies, this is just a tip, I think are best if they always have, whatever they're doing, is some sound bubbles or sound bites from some children, because they'll tell you it made a difference to me, or from some staff, or from some parents, or from the community. It depends what you're doing. So it's a whole range of internal evidence and external evidence, because that really does set your study up. And don't forget, you wanted to share this with everybody, and they want to be convinced in the nicest possible way that actually stands up well, because these people are saying, and because the point we're doing all this for is, oh, I might try that. I'll try that. This school, it did make a difference to this school. There's the evidence. That's something we could consider later on, because actually, on London experience shows that once we started, they all did their one. We couldn't stop them after that. And you might think, oh my goodness, we're too busy to do that. But they would do one a year, at least one a year. And after a while, they would have their own school collections, never mind compassionate schools or whatever. It was their school collection. And by the way, and I know you would never dream of doing this exercise to please Ofsted, but by the way, when Ofsted saw a school that had a case study of what it thought was good, or a collection of case studies, believe you me, in terms of self-evaluation, you were halfway down the track. I know we're talking about compassionate schools here, but it's a general thing. It's highly impressive, because it's still very rare, actually. And I can tell you this, it's very, very rare still to have schools who have got one or two case studies. They may be able to show and tell, but very rare that they've written it up to the standard we are hoping for. So that's the evaluation. And then we're really going after that to next steps, because we're all school improvers. We know we're on a journey and it never finishes. So the next steps would be, well, actually, having done that, we want to go on to do this. We want to build on the success of this and develop it further. Or you might argue, well, actually, we feel we've taken this as far as it's gone. It's complete in itself, which I can think of some very discrete ones that have possibly got a short-term objectives, and they are complete. So you could leave it like that and say, well, our next steps are to write another study related to this about something else. So I've gone through that very quickly. Let me pause just let me say one more thing and let me shut up and let you ask questions, and I'll come back and say something else. I think you need to give some considerations. I needn't hardly tell my primary colleagues this, but to my secondary colleagues, to illustrating the case study. Nobody wants to read 3,000 words of prose, however wonderful it might be. You need to capture it. Is it a diagram you want to show occasionally? Is it a table that sets out some information? Are there photographs? And of course, you could always put in, there are other ways of capturing this, a short video or whatever it might be. But think very hard about how you're presenting and showing and the illustrations, because that's key, I think, to sort of bringing the study to life. Otherwise, it becomes too dry, I think. A last word about apologies for the one you've got, because the only one I managed to persuade a school to do, but they were writing it for their multi-academy trust as well as for compassionate schools. So it's longer than I would normally recommend. But we do say about 3,000 words, which is only about 5 or 6 type pages, including illustrations. If you want to do more, nobody's going to stop you. But to make the task manageable, 5 or 6 type pages with illustrations is not. And the last thing I would say is make it a collaborative endeavor. That's not to say everybody, but all the schools who've done this have always said they set up a little writing group. Not to say to be exclusive, they might want to consult, look for evidence, but actually to say, and I'm saying this to the head teachers who may be listening, don't delegate this to one person. you're the best writer in the school, go and write a case study, because obviously it's a collaborative endeavor. So maybe 2 or 3 people are enough, little steering group, and then they can, you know, they can share the work, but also then you can spread it out. This is a draft. What do you think of that? That's not so good. Bring it back. So I'll stop there for a moment, Azita, or anybody else, and just to say I've really just gone through the structure there, but it's your study, it's unique to you, and nobody wants to say you must do it this way. The fact of having a scaffold, as you know, when you write anything, to have a scaffold is useful to everybody, particularly when people who don't know your school are trying to get an understanding of what you're writing about. So I'll stop there, Azita, for the moment.
Brilliant. One thing I'd just like to add, the example that David shared was very much, I'd say was more holistic in terms of one of the strands. And what we'd ideally like is for you to really focus in, which I know David's mentioned, on one proposition. But I think it's really important because particularly if you're doing the vision strand, for example, calcium, vision, you no doubt have either covered all of the propositions in that strand. So it may well be you want to mention some of the other areas within your case study, but for this, we are focusing on this particular proposition. But again, that is up to you how you do it. What we don't want too much is sort of jumping between the strands, even though, as we said, your work inevitably will cross over. But for the purpose of this, what we're hoping by the end of this is that we are going to identify areas that some schools might say, well, actually, I really like what Calcium School's done on vision on proposition 1. I'm going to see if I can do something similar by looking at proposition 2. So that by the end, we're not meaning the end of this year, but what we'd like to eventually have is a number of case studies for each of the propositions, so that we've got a really good toolkit for people to dip into. And you are hopefully are going to be our, start this off for everybody else. I think, as David said, I think once it starts, I think it hopefully will keep rolling, and that you've maybe already got ideas for what your next case study might be. And by the way, we're not stopping you writing more than one if you want to. Thought I'd throw that in. Any questions or any observations or anything that any of you think, well, actually, I might need a little bit of help with coming up with my title or with my strand and my proposition, because that's where myself, Gilroy, Manjit and David are available to sort of support you on those aspects. Over to you. Or just general feelings. Have we answered or given you enough ideas to get going? Razia, were you about to say something?
Yeah, I'm always about to say something, Azita. Yeah, David has, the way he's spoken about how it should be put down, that's very clear. But I would like a one-to-one meeting. I know I've been saying this to you, and we can pencil it in the diary.
Yeah.
What I would like to propose, where I'm thinking it will sit, and I'd like to discuss it with any one person of what I've got in my head and how I would like to present it, and whether you would think I'm thinking along the right lines.
Yeah, and that's exactly, I probably left that stage out. I've been to the 3 I'm taking on, and we have started that initial discussion so that we can fine tune together what would be a good case study and how it could work. So I should have mentioned that. So and the other bit, and I don't want to be too heavy on what I'll call the hosts, as it were, or the Compassionate Schools group. But the only other bit I've done is say to them, if you ever want to send me a short draft or a little bit, or send me an email, then I'll comment on what you've written happily, or I'll answer a query by email. But obviously, if we take on a number of schools, we can't. But I think you're right. first visit is crucial, where you can really set it up, absolutely, and then be there in reserve if you need to email or send a draft. And that's how I'm working with my 3 schools.
Yeah, just to add, because I know Kalsam, you're focusing on vision. Razia, you're not sure yet. We've got so the CoED Foundation, we've got a meeting on the 14th of June. So I'm planning to come up to Birmingham for that meeting. So I will be around on the afternoon of the 14th and the morning of the 15th. So Kalsam, if you'd like me to come and visit, and that works with you, I'm happy to come in. And Razia, if you want me to come and see you, I can. Manjit, do you want to, Manjit, you're focusing on Gilroy. I do get you two muddled up now. One of you is curriculum. Is that you, Manjit?
Yeah, that's
and
me.
Gilroy, your call to action. So Razia, if you're thinking you're not sure which strand you want to focus on, have a little look, because Manjit would be the person for you to talk to if it was definitely curriculum. Gilroy would be the person to talk to if it's call to action. And if it's ethos or vision, then it will be me.
Yeah, I'm
Colin
thinking
was leading on that, but I think I'm sort of helping him out with that bit too.
Yeah, I'm thinking ethos and culture, Azita, but that's why I'd like to share, have a discussion to make sure that I am focusing on the right thing.
Okay, so what I'll do outside after this meeting is liaise with you, Kalsam, and you, Razia, about fixing up a time to actually come in and see you both. Ollie, how's it for you? You seem to be, you both have met already.
Yeah,
and,
that's fine. It's God, I've not written something properly for a very long time, so that'll be quite hard. But yeah, that'll be fine.
But I think, as David said, though, it's not something, is it, as head teachers that we have really been asked to do before. So it is new.
So yeah, no, I think it sounds fine, and yeah.
And actually, just to interpose, that sometimes they start, and this one, the 2 I've done have started actually. The head, it was just, I just joined for an agenda item, a senior leadership meeting. It obviously got many other things to discuss, but it was a question of saying, and then it was a nice discussion about what do we think we do well, and how are we a compassionate school, and where are we? And what they come up with in the end is, of course, something different. But that was a nice stage before actually we got onto the practicalities of saying, okay, we'll start with that, and we've got 3 people to do X. So it was a nice, because I'm sorry not said enough about being a compassionate school, because I think before we break it down to the 16, we have to be sure as a school, the senior leadership team in particular, well, what is a compassionate school? And we've got a lot of work on that, because that makes it incredibly different for what London did or anybody else. Nobody else has written a series of case studies on compassionate schools, which makes this challenging, but really be useful to everybody if we can get that.
I was also, I mentioned I sent a little email out prior to this going ahead, just as an extra reminder to the heads that I've been involved with, that I noticed the NAHT's conference behind in the background, compassion was one of the main words on there. So I was thinking at some point it would be really quite a good idea maybe to reach out to the NAHT and share some of what we're doing, because that's obviously a big audience of head teachers.
Indeed.
Yes, please do, Kalsam.
I found that really helpful. Thank you, David. It brought some clarity. I think the conversation we're going to have is going to be really helpful, because it's being really specific, isn't it? I was thinking as David was talking, what do we think we've done successfully, what we're really proud of, and trying not to move out of that space where you want your case study to be really specific is going to be the challenge. But yeah, absolutely, I'd love to discuss that further. My question is around timeframes, because I'm pleased that you've said something around a little steering group, a working party, because I think that will produce a much better outcome. So what are you thinking of in terms of timeframes for the case study to put together by?
We had originally hoped by the end of the summer term, but I'm just mindful that we're now in June. I think that's something for the CoED board to sort of go away and have a think about. But the last thing, because partly I was thinking September as a deadline, but that's almost saying to you, you've got your summer holidays to do it in. I don't think that's really fair. Although for some of you, you might actually think, actually, I'd prefer to just get on and do a bit of it in my summer holidays. So I think that's something for us as a group to come forward. Realistically, if we had them at the end of July, we wouldn't be sharing them till September anyway with other schools. But what I think is important, and this was something that I was thinking about, and I was discussing with Amajot, if we're wanting to get schools on board for next year, I think it's really important we get them to know about this side of the year, because one of the things I know, Calson, when we talked about it, if we're asking schools to do this next year, some of them will be, well, I've planned my next year already, and actually, if I'd known this earlier, I might have put that into my school development plan as something I want to focus on. So it's getting that balance right. I mean, you're the head teachers here. What's your view on it, realistically?
I think this is a really crazy busy time of the year. We were just going through what we're doing these last 7 weeks, and it is really busy. And in a sense, I was thinking I'd have to try and plow on and do most of it myself, but it wouldn't produce the best work.
Exactly.
What I'm getting from David is you want quality, and it's so important. So I don't want to rush something that you look back on later and think, God, I could have written it so much better had I done it in a less rushed fashion. So I think, that's what we're looking for.
Just to be helpful here, I think I don't want to use you talk about time frames, which could be long, of course, but actually I'll use this horrible expression, oven ready, as a horrible expression, but actually some schools have got more things oven ready than they think they have. I alluded back to that senior team discussion about what would they do, but when they chose something and they shared with the middle leaders, well, this is what we're doing, what have we got? It was a surprise even to the head teacher, may I say. It was a surprise what you'd actually got when everybody said, well, you remember we had a CPD day? You remember we wrote up that? You remember that we wrote that? Or because, as you say, schools are so busy, you move on to the next thing straight away. So what I would urge you to think about is the collective memory of the school. I mean, not going back longer than 2 years maybe, but I assure you you've got more there than you think you have. So that's my advice there, to have a good search. What have we got? Obviously, you might want to start new. I understand that, in which case you'll need a year probably.
I think also, I know, Razia, you've said about your gold UNICEF Rights Respecting School Award. That's all about showing your evidence. And there will be something there, I've got absolutely no doubt, that you'll be able to take out and use. And your school improvement plan, your CEF, all of that as well. Yeah,
well, I'm working, if it's helpful, I'm working with the school doing their journey towards a right respecting school. So they've simply done, when they started it, and they're near the end of it. Well, never near the end, but you know what I mean? They've gone through the journey. Their problem is their collective memory. They've had to look back and look at the stages and look at the debates, look at the focuses they want to do within that. But that was a good start for them, because already their structure in terms of the story was almost laid out for them.
I just wanted to quickly jump in. What I received from David from his case study was reams of text, actually, with loads of there was some pictures, and I put that into the structure that you see there.
Yes.
So there is still an element, while there's only a small collective of us, there's still an element of, if you've got blocks of text that you want to make it look pretty, you can send that through, and I can do things like that. So in terms of the look and feel, that hopefully will be helpful. It might not be something that we can carry on longer term, but certainly for the first, you guys get the top-notch help.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I think the key thing that David has said today for me is initially I was thinking, what is the focus and what am I going to? But it is the pooling. I've written it in my diary that it's going to my SLT agenda tomorrow, that how did we get to that gold UNICEF? From that, we've got the Sanctuary of School Award, and now we're going for our re-accreditation. Yeah. Tell me all your ideas. You go away and draft it, and then we'll finalise it. So
yeah, and if at that SLT meeting you could share the 16 propositions would be really good to focus on.
Yeah,
brilliant. Laura, sorry,
Laura, come on.
Hello, sorry guys, I'm here. I just wanted to know if you want it all written, or do you want some in kind of video format? I'm just thinking the one I'm probably going to do is the citizens call to change, and I'm thinking to get some of my children to talk and to speak about our anti-racism journey. Sure. Do you want some in that format, or would you rather have it as a written piece?
Well, personally, we could discuss this on June the 14th or whenever, but I certainly think that in fact, if people are, because we are going to commission 1 or 2 professional videos, aren't we, for some schools? So I think it's fine, providing it can be shared, which it can't it? I think probably my advice, I've only got experience of a handful of people who've done the video case studies, and what they've done is written accompanying notes with it so that it's clear in headlines almost, in other words, they haven't written it out in prose, but the title, the title's there, the structure's there, the aims are there, the story, you know what I mean? The evidence is there, but all the more or less the text, the filling out of the text is video, isn't it? So so in other words, the structure's written and you have an accompanying video.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah. All right, thank you. Yeah, I'll have a little think about what's going to be easiest and quickest to do, I think.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Dave, I went to Lara and you were still talking. I do apologise. Was there anything you want to add?
Typically, I've talked too much now. I forgot what I was going to say, so it can't have been very important.
Apologies.
Oh, yes, I know what I meant to say is the last thing is why I was so keen for the senior leaders to get involved at the beginning, but not to do the work, was I'm still not convinced that most senior leaders have had a collective discussion on what is a compassionate school. So in a sense, jumping to a case study before we really talk to each other honestly about how compassionate we are as a school. I'm not trying to teach gamma suck eggs here. You may have done all this, so forgive me. But I think going down the line, they've all found it, the 3 I'm working with, they've all found it valuable to just sort of do their collective thoughts together before plunging straight into what's our title then. So there's a little bit of a stage first to say, well, and are we really compassionate? And because actually people will be reading this and say, well, they've written this and I know they're a brilliant school and they're great. And it's a lovely case study, but I didn't see much compassion in it. It was something technical about how best to teach reading, which isn't necessarily a compassionate study. It might be you've got children who have got great struggles to be included. You see what I mean? So just have that thought in your mind. I suppose you wouldn't have joined this meeting tonight if you weren't already convinced you were compassionate schools, but it's worth thinking about whether that applies to everybody in your senior leadership team, for example. Okay.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And thank you for everybody giving up their time today. Hopefully you found this useful. Amajut's got this recorded, so we'll send it out to everybody who's here now, and plus those that have sent apologies to say they can't come. And I think, if you want to share this with your leadership team, that's absolutely, this is the more schools we get on board, the better. So we're not trying to do anything sort of secretively. This is very much about sharing. So please feel free to share that. Ollie, was that a goodbye or a saying something?
That was a hand up. Sorry. Yeah, I realised me going, bye.
Hi, Ollie.
It was just, I wondered if we could have, if there is any written case study of the case study, anything that of sort of what we're looking at. I get the idea, but sort of at the moment it's quite a blank piece of paper. It's not a blank piece of paper. You know, is there a word limit? Is there one that you've done before that we could, not exactly, but that we could look at and go, oh, okay, you know, it's 2,000 words and it's got this. Is there anything that's already been done that we could look at?
Well, I've got, yes, it would take Amajot to do something about it, but I've got books full of published books of London Challenge, but they're not necessarily on compassion, but they are examples of case studies on that structure.
Well, could perhaps have like one or
we
two
can produce
of the ones that you think are most appropriate for us to sort of, as a starting point. It's just that starting point. You know, I'm not going against Laura's idea of doing it on video. I'm not sure I'm clever enough to do that. So,
well, I can sort that out. Maybe on June the 14th, when the trustees are meeting, we can probably sort out some examples from the books I've got. We can abstract 2 or 3 and then possibly put them on email for everybody. But it'll be up to the group to decide whether they're the best example. But yes, in principle, I think we could meet that request.
Okay. Brilliant. You've all got my email, you've got Amajot. So if anything comes to mind afterwards that you've got some questions, you think, oh, wished I'd asked, then just drop an email and we'll get you an answer as soon as possible. And thank you for joining us on the journey.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
thanks, everyone.
Bye.
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 Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Amajot. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just stay on for a second if that's okay.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
Yeah.
Was that all right, Amajot?
It was lovely. I'm going to
do you want to stop recording?
Yeah.